Is Mark Cuban becoming the next Jerry Jones, and why aren't the Mavericks seeking compensation for Rick Carlisle's departure as he looks for a new job? This is the Gray Area right here on Kevin Gray Sports. My name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. And you can catch you on your home of the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers, 105.3 The Fan. The Mavericks are not pursuing Masai Ujiri or former Boston Celtics president Danny Ainge, this according to Mark Stein of the New York Times. They are considering heavily elevating Michael Finley to president of basketball operations at this time, as Mark Cuban has decided that it appears that he will stay potentially internal when it comes to the president of basketball operations, while still potentially hiring an external candidate to bring in more experience alongside Michael Finley. Mark Stein writing in his Stein line column, quote, Cuban needs to surround himself with as much versatility and experience as the Mavericks can muster, since he will always be the organization's lead shot caller and prefers to render the final say after consulting top aides, end quote. That statement right there should frighten you. Not because Michael Finley isn't qualified for the job or doesn't deserve to get the job to become the new president of basketball operations. It's because your man Mark Cuban literally won't even try to pursue candidates to give you an idea that he could cede control when it comes to basketball decisions and personnel matters. That should scare you the most. It should really honestly make you upset if you're a Mavericks fan. Because if you're Mark Cuban, what you've proven over the past 10 years is that you've not been able to put yourself in a position to attract free agents, draft properly, and aside from the 2018 draft where you're able to get Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson, you've shown the inability to draft and develop players out of the draft. So now you look at yourself in a position where your organization is a complete dumpster fire, and you say, you know what? I'll probably consider elevating Michael Finley to the president of basketball operations, but I'm not even going to pursue Masai Ujiri. I'm not even going to take a look at Danny Ainge because I want to continue to hold all the control and the power when it comes to final say, when it comes to basketball decisions and matters around here. What? Mark Cuban, look, continues to try to be the smartest man in the room. He's already alienated portions of his fan base with this Bob Voulgaris character being introduced into the story. He continues to alienate the fan base by not even considering or even pursuing one of the most qualified, if not the most qualified candidate out there, and that's going to be available at the end of the season in one Masai Ujiri, not even taking a look at Danny Ainge or anyone else with the proper basketball experience to come in, take a look at this organization, and be able to help them make basketball decisions going forward. And on top of that, you're not even going to see compensation for Rick Carlisle's departure because you don't want to, quote-unquote, complicate his search for a new job. This according to ESPN's Tim McMahon. I don't know what Mark Cuban's thinking. I don't know what kind of process that he's going through, but the way that he continues to comport himself, what we've heard and seen reported now with respect to this job and how he is going about searching for his new general manager and president of basketball operations, this should ultimately scare you. Not necessarily because Luka Doncic won't sign his $201.5 million extension coming up this summer. Not because that the guy in Mark Cuban won't have the ability to potentially get the most out of Michael Finley. But what scares you most about the idea that Michael Finley could be taking this job is not, again, that he's not qualified. It's the fact that it appears, based on the circumstances that we've seen so far, that Mark Cuban's looking for a yes man. Well, you say, Kevin, you can't necessarily put that on Michael Finley. He has an opportunity to try and make some changes around here. He has the support of Dirk Nowitzki, who Mark Cuban brought in as a special advisor. He also has the support of this organization, knowing that he has worked his way up the ranks and is the current vice president of basketball operations and continues to have a more of a say when it comes to personnel matters for this team. I get that and understand that. But it's about perception versus reality, and the perception is right now that Mark Cuban doesn't want to cede the control. He wants to put somebody in place where he can continue to have his sphere of influence on so that he can ultimately make the basketball decisions for this team. And more importantly, not put someone in a position that could come in and give him the kind of positional versatility to be able to tell him, hey, Mark, this might not necessarily be a good idea. We said Kevin Stein also reported that they are potentially going to bring in an external candidate to help provide some versatility into the front office. How much, though, will that person be able to help influence Mark Cuban in his decision-making? If it's not your man Vegas Bob or Bob Vulgaris out here talking to him, who is Mark Cuban really going to listen to when it comes to basketball decisions going forward here? And that ultimately is the problem. Mark Cuban is what a lot of folks think Jerry Jones is. Jerry Jones, the owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, seems to have all final decision and say-so when it comes to personnel matters. But he puts his title on it also as general manager. The real shadow GM around here, it appears, is Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, who has his hand in thousands of different things, hundreds of businesses, continues to not keep the main thing, and why it appears that there's so much instability with this organization going forward. Because if you're a free agent looking to potentially come to this team this summer, or even via trade, whatever you want to say, what makes a free agent think that a organization that has lost its coach and general manager within a week, even with the superstar and Luka Doncic, would want to come to this dumpster fire, knowing the perception of what Mark Cuban is right now? Mark Cuban has put himself through a public mess that has seen him go from one of the most popular owners in the NBA and for this fan base to one of its most vilified in the span of a week. That is because we have started to come to learn the inner workings of what's going on in this organization and who really has voice when it comes to Mark Cuban's ear. It's not the people who it should have been. It wasn't necessarily Donnie Nelson because Mark Cuban had lost faith in him. Rick Carlisle was apparently getting direction and suggestion from your man Bob Vulgaris when it came to lineups and rotations. And now Mark Cuban finds himself in a position trying to save himself with good PR by bringing in a guy in Dirk Nowitzki to save his face a little bit. And even now, still, with this report coming out from Mark Stein, this is not what you want if you're a Mavericks fan. Again, this isn't an indictment on Michael Finley. He is extremely qualified for this job, deserves to have the opportunity to have this job as president of basketball operations. But for me, I honestly wish it wasn't with the Mavericks in this particular case, because unfortunately it's a catch-22 here. Even if Mark Cuban is able to have success with Michael Finley, Mark Cuban will be the one trying to take the credit and success for being the guy that hired Michael Finley. And if things go south, it will be looking like Michael Finley was under the thumb of Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban will continue to get blasted by folks who watch and cover this team and talk about this team for his inability to find the right man and should have gone outside of the organization to bring in someone who has been able to have that kind of success and have more experience. So either way, this is a bad look for Mark Cuban. Again, not on Michael Finley. He deserves this job. But at the same time, Mark Cuban has created a public nightmare and a public PR mess for the way that this has been handled. And now to not even seek compensation for Rick Carlisle's departure, knowing that he had 2 years left on his contract and is looking to get a new job somewhere else, and you're not going to do that because you don't want a quote-unquote complicated situation. I understand trying to be a real one and trying to do right by Carlisle after what he's done for you for 13 years and brought you an NBA championship. But you're in an organization that needs to get all the help that it can get right now, and getting compensation for Rick Carlisle and moving on from this job to another one is the right thing to do. It's the right business move because your man Mark Cuban is about all that action and all that business, although he's not handling it the right way right now, it seems, with respect to his front office when it comes to general manager and the new head coach. And again, the person who comes in as the president of basketball operations and the general manager will look to potentially hire the next head coach. While Michael Finley looks to be the front runner for the president of basketball operations, it appears Jamal Mosley continues to be the front runner for the job as the next head coach of this basketball team. Again, not a problem, no harm, no foul here. But for Mark Cuban, what he has put himself through public relations-wise, basketball-wise, and the perception versus the reality of what he is and what he chooses to do as the owner/governor of this basketball team are in two different stratospheres of reality. The reality is your man Mark Cuban is starting to lose it a little bit. Not because he doesn't understand business, but he doesn't understand what the perception is versus the reality of who he is. He's a man who's turning into Jerry Jones. That isn't necessarily a good thing. You don't need to be the smartest man in the room. You need to be surrounded by individuals who can tell you your stuff stinks and be able to help you get to where you need to go, and not hire a bunch of yes men, because that's what it appears that your man Mark Cuban is doing. We will see how this continues to unfold, but right now, the Mavericks are a complete dumpster fire, and after what Mark Stein reported, it doesn't appear that dumpster fire is getting put out anytime soon. It's because your man Mark Cuban decided he wants full control and autonomy. I told you Masai Ujiri wasn't coming here. Not because your man Mark Cuban didn't have the requisite bag to be able to do it, but your man Mark Cuban has control problems. And those control issues are rearing their ugly head once again. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. This has been another episode of The Gray Area. We'll talk to you later. Peace.